Hello, hope everyone's doing well. And today we're going over chapter 14. Now, I've been putting this off for a while because they said there was going to be a weather update, and I wasn't sure how it was going to affect this stages. But there's been no other news on that until this point. And also, we have chapter 15 coming out some point in the near future. They announced it's coming out, and that Houston 2 will be the reward ship, but no details on when or what the mechanics will be. So before then, if you need help getting through it, hopefully this helps you. I cleared it. As you can see, I got, 3 stars in 2 of the stages. I didn't bother going back to the other two. I did get New Orleans from the stage from 14.4. My team is definitely not the most optimal, but I'll go over it and explain, my general thinking for ships. And I'm also working on a budget fleet, but it's not quite leveled yet. I did some testing with it. It seems to be okay, but not all the way there. So let's start with some mechanics. The first mechanic I want to talk about is level difference. So basically, if your ships are above the enemies by one level, you do 2% more damage and you take 2% less damage. However, this also works in reverse. So if the enemies are one level above you, then they do more damage and you take more damage. So when you get to chapter 14, 14.1, not so much of an issue, as well as 14.2, because now we go up to level 125. But for 14.3 and 14.4, you'll definitely want to be level 125 with most of your ships, if not all of them. This will also stack with the chapter's threat level. So as you can see, like I have this at safe. But for like chapter 3, I don't have it. I've only done one extra clear. You only unlock the threat level getting decreased when you fully clear the stage. So that's 14-1-2. Need 4 clears of the boss to start lowering the threat level. 14.3 needs 5, and then 14.4 needs 6 clears to 100% it to lower the threat level. So at threat level lethal, you don't get any reduction, but once you start getting the threat level down, you can see reduce the level, reduce the damage you take by 20%. And you can check, as you can show here, by clicking on the threat level. And also, when you get to safe, you also get a damage buff. It's not showing here, but the wiki says it's there. So yeah, definitely becomes a lot easier to farm and get all the stars once you get the threat level to safe. Yeah, that's the first thing you want to worry about. Just make sure you're leveled up. 120 is fine for 14.1 and 14.2, but you want to start getting up to level 125 once you start getting up to the, 14.3, especially 14.4. Let's go over the levels. So for mobs, for 14-1 is 121 for mobs, 122 for boss. 14-2 is 122 for mobs, 124 for boss. 14-3, mobs level 125, the boss is level 126. And for 14.4, the mobs are level 127, and the boss is level 128. So just try and get your ships leveled up, and that's the first big step to getting this cleared. Now, next up is the recon value and the air control. We're focused on the recon. As you can see, I have this fully cleared, so it's gone. But if you don't have it cleared, then we'll show on this one. Okay, so once you 100% the stage, the recon's gone. What recon does is if you don't meet the value, you get the ambush fleets, you get the airstrikes. So, but when you meet the value, those are disabled completely. So, and that's a big help for these stages because they're tough as is, and just taking that extra damage, doing those extra battles, wearing your ships out, wasting ammo, especially for the ambush fleets, that's a pain. So, to calculate your recon value, you take your total evasion plus your total evasion to the 2/3 power, and that gives you recon value. And this is calculated separately for your fleets. So your boss fleet will be a different value than your mob fleet, but only the highest value is checked for this. And so for ships you want to use, destroyers are very, very useful because they have good evasion stats for the most time. And then carriers, obviously. And for air control, you want to bring more carriers. Fighters give the most points to this, so someone with double fighters like Aquila here is really good. Because with her setup to be a healer, she runs double fighters. That's very, very nice for this. And to help with reducing the enemy's air control value, just have good AA, basically. And so, San Diego, she's free to get. Good AA, there you go. Seattle also works. Now, if your recon value is reduced because, let's say, you lose San Diego, someone in your mob fleet during the fight, and you have a couple fights left, the ambushes and airstrikes are still disabled. It still keeps them disabled even if you lose someone, so it doesn't double whammy you with that. Now, next up is Concealment / the poor visibility mechanic. Basically, during these stages, if it has this poor visibility icon, so the thundercloud, lightning coming out of it, your ships will get a little gauge that hovers above their heads. It's yellow, and that will slowly decrease over time. And they also get a yellow area around them that slowly shrinks over time. What this does is, while that's active, enemies who target you cannot target you directly, so their shots will hit somewhere in that zone. They might hit you, but there's also a good chance they also hit in that zone. So this is the concealment gauge and the concealment zone. The size of the concealment zone is determined by the evasion stat of your vanguard, so destroyers really good for this. And the gauge and the zone, as I said, shrink, go down over time. The only way to restore it is to kill everything on the screen. So if you fully clear the screen before the next wave starts, then your concealment gauge will go back up, your zone will increase again, and it'll be good to go. So make sure you're able to actually kill stuff, pretty quickly. Now, for the enemies, there's a couple options onto how to deal with them. The first, and the thing you should go for first, is lighthouses. Now, Chapter 14-2 does not have a lighthouse, but all the other stages do. Be aware of that. What the lighthouse does is it will periodically through the battle, it will spawn a lit up area that will completely disable the enemy's concealment gauge. It doesn't set it to 0, so when the lighthouse turns off for a bit, their gauge is shrunk to wherever it would be, but it does disable it for a little bit of time. So you should always go for the lighthouse first. For some of the stages, like 14-4 and 14-3, there will be an enemy that spawns in the way. We're focused on 14-4 because it's the last stage, the hardest one, and it has the best reward, New Orleans. But there will be an enemy that blocks the way. Once you get this stage fully cleared, then the enemy goes away. But you should be focused on getting that lighthouse first. There's also these flare shells. What they'll do is allow you to spawn flares during battle. These will be a yellow zone that when the enemies are in the zone, this also disables their concealment gauge. You get 3 per stack. And there's 2 stacks for Chapter 14-4. Now, enemies will also spawn their own. So, like Sendai will spawn these flares. So just avoid the red circles because those will also disable your own concealment gauge. And there's also some ships that spawn flares. Sendai, Triste, and this last one I'm not too sure about, but Alfredo or Lani. They all have skills that spawn flares, and that behave the same way as the flares that you pick up here. Now, all of those are elites. Sendai might be a blue that retrofits into elite, so not the best option for actually using them, but it's there. As you can see, there's fog. These will make the foggy areas will make your concealment gauge decrease slower. Fog, dense fog, and these will move around the map periodically. You want to try and avoid finding the enemies in the fog if at all possible. But if you can't, or if like your options are a really strong tier 3 with all the red triangles, and the other options are something else that's not, then I would go for the weaker one, even if it is in the fog. Basically, do not fight these fleets right here. Battleship fleets that are 3 stars red. They are very, very difficult. Now, for Chapter 14-3 and 14-4, the light fleets, so like the destroyer-shaped fleets, these will spawn enemy submarines. And we have San Diego being our Vanna White here, showing off some of the anti-submarine gear we have. So, what you'll want to do is have ships with a decent ASW stat. I'd say about 200 is a good threshold, so San Diego's a little bit above that. That's good. The Atlantas are quite good at this. Destroyers are generally pretty good at it. And you have some gear to make it easier. So the best piece of gear for this is the Hedgehog. You can get this from doing the Submarine Weekly mission for the first time. And this is very, very good. You want to be using this. Yeah, just very, very potent. After that, you can get the improved depth charge from doing the weekly missions, and you get the gear prints for it. This one's pretty good as well, and you get multiple of them. So I'd say make sure you have at least 2 of these on your Vanguard. Both of these on Vanguards, whether it's, someone has one, someone else has the other, or someone has 2 of them. That way you can kill the submarines, because they are a pain. Now, if you don't kill the submarines, they end up ramming your main fleet, and they do a bunch of damage. That's a real pain. We also have these Mark 35 torpedo mounts that can hit submarines, and they're magnetic. And they only do 35% of their damage when they hit the submarines. And I have it on San Diego, who is not great at torpedoes, but these are an option if you want to run them. There's also some other gear you can run that has ASW effects, but it's for light carriers and warspite. This being the ASW planes they equip in the auxiliary slot. Now you can get both of these in the core data shop. But you can also make the TMB-3 Avenger ASW edition in the Gear Lab. That's something you can do. And yeah, so that's good stuff for dealing with submarines. Now, there will also be suicide boats, which you've seen plenty of before, and also their pain of a cousin, the ramming ship. Now, the ramming ship have a bunch of HP, pretty tanky. They also spawn shields. So, and these will just go across the screen. They'll spawn, they'll wait a little bit, and they'll maybe spawn a searchlight in front of them to reduce your concealment gauge, spawn a shield, and just run headlong for your main fleet. And if they hit, they do a ton of damage like the submarines. So you want to kill them. Now you can use your Vanguard to do this. With their guns, you can save up torpedo for when you see them spawn. Say, okay, just slide over, drop torpedoes, take them out. Having battleships with AP secondaries is quite good for this. So I'd recommend having AP guns as secondaries for all your battleships if you're using them, battlecruisers, etc. You can also body block the ramming ships. Just be aware that you all stick ramming damage with your Vanguard fleet doing this. So if it's your main fleet's getting really, really weak, and it will save your main fleet from dying and just take your Vanguard fleet down a lot, and you can clear the stage as close to the end, to do it then. But I wouldn't just be ramming them willy-nilly unless you're using like Glowworm, who is built to ram ships. Now I want to talk about my strategy for how I do these stages. We're still focusing on 13-4, but you can apply this logic backwards to the other ones, except like the submarine stuff. So when I get into a stage, the first thing I want to do is go over to the lighthouse. Now I have to cross this thing because right now I can do, just click once and they all move over. But when you don't have it full cleared, you have to move slowly across, and ships move, and the fog moves. But the first thing you want to do, secure the lighthouse. This way you get that bonus. Be aware that, like I said earlier, in 14-3 and 14-4, there will be an enemy blocking the lighthouse. Now, I try to avoid having enemies spawn in the foggy areas. This isn't terrible, because I'd rather have them spawn in the fog than this battleship be 3 stars or tier 3 or 3 triangles, whatever you want to call it. Those are just a pain in the ass to deal with. They do a ton of damage to your main fleet. Even if really good healers, it still does a lot. So if I ever see a red one of these with the 3 triangles, I just retreat. It's only 10 oil wasted. And even if I do like the first battle and it's all good, and then one spawns, I'll just retreat because I just do not want to deal with them. So if the first 4 you don't get any red ones, then I'd say continue the run. If you do get some of those red battleship ones, I would say just retreat. The fog does move around, so be aware of that. Try and avoid fighting people in the fog. Now, as for the flares and the ammo, I try and keep my ammo as high as possible because it does this extra buff. So once I get down to like 2, I'll go restock. There are 7 fights you have to do before you get to the boss for this map. So you'll want to be hanging on to your ammo, try and use it where it's necessary. Fight the harder enemies first, so like 3-star of the light enemies, and then if you have to, the 3-star of the heavy enemies. when you have the higher ammo, just because you can save your debuffed battles for the weaker enemies. And for the flares, I save one for the boss, so I usually save this one at the bottom for the boss, and the other one, I either use when I'm super low on ammo, or I'm completely out of ammo. So if I'm, going for the beat all enemies, on harder or for harder enemies. So like if I absolutely have to fight a 3-star of these battleships, I'll use the flares. I don't want to, but that's something I can do. And then for the last flare, like I said, I use it for the boss and also for submarines. If I have a particularly hard fight I have to do, then I will move my submarines around. You can go to strategy, little thing, and you can reposition them. They'll cost oil, be aware of that, but it's definitely worth it if you are trying to clear the stage. I have no problem calling them in for the first 5 times, or like if I need them 5 times, but I always save one ammo for the boss. And I also want to make sure they're relatively high HP for the boss. What I'll do is when the boss spawns, I'll move my submarines over. I will grab the flares with my boss fleet, go over, grab them, and then I will fight the boss. Be aware that the boss does spawn repair ships that do a ton of healing. So you want to make sure you have some way to kill a repair ship as soon as possible. It does slowly slide forward from behind one of the battleship enemies that just like a non-humanoid. But you'll want like a battleship with really strong guns to take it out as soon as possible. Or just wipe the screen with carriers. That's another option. So that was my strategy of how I do it. Let's go over to my fleets. Obviously, like I said, not the best, but they worked. So, as you saw earlier, this is my fleets I used. I didn't have all these oaths. Like, I don't think I had a Haku oath. Didn't have Riverton oath. I didn't have New Jersey oath. And Hakuryu was like level 120 and Dev 15, so she was definitely underpowered. Anchorage was Dev 30. FDG was Dev 30. Let's just go over the fleet. So I use Vermerton just because she has 2 barrages she can spawn. That way she's firing damage out there. I'm thinking that the better idea is to use like a cruiser and 2 destroyers for this, but I use Remy because she's a decent tank. Udachi is a really good option because she is permanently available. Her retrofit item is now permanently available as well. She has decent firepower and really good torpedo, so good balance there. And also our merchant is permanently available as well. I really like San Diego for this map because there's still planes to deal with. So some of the bosses are aviation battleships. So Fuso and Yamashiro in their aviation battleship form, and their planes are there. They're not a joke this time. And she has good ASW. She has good anti-air, and she also has 2 barrages. So that's a common theme. So I really like 2 barrages. Good ASW. So yeah, San Diego, really good option. She's also permanent. She's in rotation for light cruiser metal shop. So when light cruisers are up, then you can grab her. If not, then you kind of gotta wait or hope she shows up. Now for the mob fleet, the back line, I think FTG is the best for this. This is a Fatesim 5 version. You don't have to have her Fatesim 5. I did a Dev 30. Also, you can buy her upgrades, so you can just farm 12-4 and upgrade her that way. So I'm putting her now into the fairly easy to obtain category. I know she's still a DR, but she's a lot easier than she was before. So she has a proximity barrage, so when ramming ships come close, she fires out a pretty strong barrage. I believe this is added extra when she fires her main guns. She has another barrage. But yeah, Dev 30, really good barrage, very powerful ship. AP gun, want to run it. This is a decent option because you're doing short fights with the mob fleet. Extra main gun damage, but increases reload time for the 5th shot onwards. You're not going to be shooting more than 5. Run either Beaufort Stag or the Hazemare for that hit. Now for the Ox gear, this applies to basically everyone but your Vanguard. The Vanguard can run the ASW stuff. But you're having issues with survival, just put, or your Recon, put some hydraulic steering gears in your ships. Put some toolkits. Just anything to keep them alive. Find out running repair toolkit and washing machine on all my backliners while I was doing this. Even the carriers. So, yeah, that's what you can do. If you don't have FTG, I think Monarch might also work. So, just someone with a really strong barrage, but FTG is, I feel like, the best. So I'm going to recommend her the most. And I'd recommend running 2 healers. I have Perseus and Aquila because I had them leveled. Perseus can run the ASW planes. He's really potent. Got those 2 preloads under this one. Under this one. 2 preloads, so you can wipe out the first wave of enemies pretty quick. And she has a healing for your Vanguard and your main fleet, so that's really, really good. You can proc that at the beginning of the battle. And she got decent damage output. Obviously, she's kind of slow for planes, but she also heal your boss fleet. I really recommend Perseus. She's now in permanent pool, so hopefully you're able to get her when she was on Raid Up, which is added to War Archives. Since she's a light carrier, she can run an AA gun, so I would put something with hit on it for her. And then Aquila's really nice, especially if you run her as a healer. So Rain of Starlight, if she is a fighter in her second slot, restores 8% HP to the lowest ship in your Vanguard and main fleet, and generates a shield around them. That's really, really potent. And the double fighters help with the air control value and just dealing with enemy planes. So I quite like Aquila. Also, for your carriers, the Wyvern is the best torpedo bomber to run for this stage. After that, I use the Barracuda. I really like the Barracuda, but most of the, you know, non-Japanese or German torpedo bombers will do the trick because they're all parallel. They're quite potent. So I kind of like that. And then you can, if you want, run double steam catapult, but if you need to, run survival gear. Now for the boss fleet. I have Anchorage in here because she is borderline unkillable. I didn't have the Manju on her, but if you run an Anchorage, make sure you run this torpedo on her. This is the best torpedo for her. It is the fastest because she has a smoke screen as a barrier, and yeah, so Anchorage, really potent for surviving. When I was doing this, my friend was watching me stream it on Discord, and I was giving him a heart attack just watching. Like, it was stressing him out with me just having Anchorage as a lone survivor trying to do 14-4 boss. But AP gun on her, it's good. Travel gear. They didn't have the augment gear, but just something with the slash attack's really nice. And yeah, so good tank is going to want to run. Anchorage is permanent. And then for destroyer and for another damage dealer, Kamikaze is really good. You also run your Dachi. You run Ayanami. Yeah, someone really potent. Someone just really strong. I like having a destroyer here. And then someone else with extra damage or provides buff. I just ran Honolulu because I thought it really funny to clear 14-4 using a rarity ship that is definitely not meant to be going this far in the game. She did not have any of this rainbow gear because none of this existed at the time. But something like Noshiro to buff your destroyer in the middle, really, really good option. And for the backliners, you can run New Jersey, run just a strong battleship, good option, with survival gear on them. And then for the airspace control and recon, I just ran 2 carriers again. What you could also do is you have Ulrich von Hutten. She has a proximity barrage out of fleet. So if you don't have FDG, you can run Ulrich in your boss fleet and or provide the proximity barrage to your mobbing fleet. That's a good option. And I ran Haku. I didn't have the Tennerize at the time, but she had survival gear on her. She was Dev 15. Her reload was terrible because she didn't have the fleet bonuses. And then Shinano, good damage, good strong damage. So yeah, that was my fleets I did. Oh, and my submarines, just double bidders on them. You'll be good to go. Just any combination of level, 120 about submarines, and you'll be good to go. That was the fleet I completed the stages with. The gear isn't exact, but I got the important ones. Now let's go on to the fleet I'm working on building for this that's not quite done yet, but it's more of a budget option because all the ships in it are permanently available in one place or another. Let's go to that. This is my budget fleet I'm working on. All of these ships are permanently available one place or another. Airspace control isn't all the way there. Well, it's barely off, so I just need to fiddle with some stuff. Ignore the submarines. Just anyone you have to fill the role for submarines if you're on a budget will work just fine. But FGG stay the same. Udachi's pretty tanky, so I moved her up. San Diego's still there. Laffy's quite good. Got decent ASW. And then her augment gear gives her a heal, which is really, really nice. And just makes her really, really potent. So, yeah. Any of the starters are a good option for this. But I feel like Laffy's the best for mobbing options, just because she has that heal on her. Unicorn, Perseus Mini, quite good. She has 1 preload instead of Perseus' 2. She also heals your Vanguard every time. And for the first time in battle, it restores 5% max HP to the ship in your main fleet. And after that, 3% HP to the lowest percent HP ship in your main fleet. It's not quite as good as Perseus. The effect kind of varies, and it's not everyone, but it's good enough. And Unicorn is easy to get. Her retrofit is easy enough to do. And reload command, this is nice, but you don't really need to get this to level 10. It's just nice to have. Since she's the light carrier, she can run the ASW gear on herself. That's good. Yeah, she's easy to get to. Nice. Go. Basically same reasons. Just make sure she retrofit. And then yeah, she only heals the Vanguard, so not as good as Unicorn, but good enough. Not good ASW, so I would not run the ASW gear on her, but you know, good enough option. This mob fleet in this configuration, I could almost full auto the 14-4 on safe mode with, you know, Shoho being underleveled, Unicorn being underleveled. It would just, Unicorn and Shoho were having issues staying alive because they were underleveled. Now for the boss fleet, I haven't tested it out too much, but on paper it seems good enough. So Anchorage is the same. If you can't get to Anchorage, Rune, Cheshire, Rune Muse are all permanently available and good options. But Ayanami, really, really, really strong, especially if her augment gear. So yeah, very, very potent. And then Noshiro, easy cruiser overall, and she also buffs the torpedo of all the Vanguard. So really, really good. And for the back line, it's a combo that's decent enough. Nagato's in the metal shop. Shokaku's in the metal shop. Zuikaku, I might be in the metal shop, but I know for sure you can get her as a drop from Visitors Dies in Red, the War Archives, from D3. So you can go grab her from there. But Nagato has decent barrage. I don't have gear on her. She buffs Sakura ships. It also increases damage dealt by your Sakura carriers. That's why I have Zuikaku and Shokaku. In addition to them being easy to get. Nagato also buffs them pretty good. But then she has a barrage. I wish it was a little higher, but you know, extra damage is nice. But she's just here mostly for her damage output with her gun and her buffs. Yeah, Nagato, pretty good option. Shokaku, also pretty good carrier. And then when she launches an airstrike, increases your entire fleet's damage by 10% and decreases damage it takes by 10% for 12 seconds. So have Shokaku fire her planes off level 4 with Zuikaku, and you got a combination there. And then when she sorties with Zuikaku, gets extra aviation, takes a little more damage. Not the best, but you know, good enough. Zuikaku, I do not have her skills up, but she basically has the same skill as Shokaku, but she takes less damage. Go over here and look at it. So yeah, the idea of Shokaku is taking the damage for Zuikaku. And if there's 3 more Sakura Empire ships in the ship's fleet, so we have that. Increase damage ship's airstrikes by 20%, really good. And when she launches an airstrike, increase the damage of all subsequent airstrikes by 20% for the rest of the battle, stacking up to 3 times. So, you know, that's 80% extra damage on airstrikes. That's quite good. So yeah, I quite like Zuikaku for this option. I haven't had a chance to test them because she's not leveled yet. Yeah, that's my budget fleet I'm working on. Once I have everyone fully leveled, I just been with new events. I'll try and level up the new ships, try them out a little bit, so I can talk about them. I haven't gotten these done all the way yet. But yeah, hope this was useful. Hope you enjoyed. If you thought it was useful, share with someone else. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.